Very nice, very generous. Thank you very much. But I want to give you your thought for the night this evening, Pub Theology. Every night, I give you a thought to ponder. And tonight, I'm going to give you something you can memorize. And I'm going to guess there's somebody here who your mom or your grandma or your sister, somebody's always on your back about going to church. And they're saying, you got to go to church. And you say, I don't want to get up on Sundays. Church isn't my deal. They want you to go to church. Well, I'm going to give you two things tonight. For one, you can call your mom tomorrow morning and say, Mom, I went to church last night. And she'll be so excited. And she'll say, where'd you go to church? And you can say, it's a really great place called Joe's Grill too. She might get sad about that part, but you'll at least get 50% credit. Then you can say, Mom, check it out. I know a Bible verse. And so I'm going to teach you a Bible verse tonight. It's the shortest verse in the entire Bible. It's just 2 words. So it's a pretty easy one to remember. And with the sharp women, and I'm sure some pretty bright men, you're going to memorize this one. You're going to feel great about it. You're going to be able to say, you know what? I memorized the Bible. Here's the most basic, shortest Bible verse in the entire Bible. It goes like this. Jesus wept. It's a pretty simple one. It's 2 words. Jesus wept. It's the shortest Bible verse in the whole Bible. But you know what? It might actually be the most powerful one. And here's why. You hear a story like Carmi's Army. You hear a story about Carmi and about Brooke and her family. And when you hear a story about a 9-year-old girl that has cancer that loses that battle, there's something in your soul, like if you're like me, if you're like most human beings, it just says, that's not right. It says that it's tragic. It says that it shouldn't be, and it breaks your heart. And you may not have asked this question, but in your heart you may think, like I do sometimes, is if God really is good, how does he let 9-year-old girls die of cancer? Right? How could there be such jacked up stuff in this world if God is supposed to be a God of love? Like, does God even actually care about the fact that we're in this world where stuff like that goes down? And the shortest verse in the Bible tells us that he does, and here's why. The context of that verse is this. One of Jesus' best friends is dying. His name is Lazarus. And so Lazarus' sister sent a message to Jesus. They say, hey, Jesus, Lazarus is dying. Would you come save him? The story goes like this. We're not sure why, but Jesus stays where he's at for a couple days, and Lazarus dies. Jesus finally shows up, and his buddy's been dead for 4 days. And when Jesus comes into town, these sisters come out, and they say what any of us would say. If you saw Jesus and you asked him to come save your brother and he didn't show up for 4 more days, you would say, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't be dead. And I bet there's some time in your life you can go back to and just think to yourself that you've said that to God. If you would have shown up and done what I think you're supposed to do as God, this wouldn't happen, or this wouldn't happen, or this wouldn't happen in my life. And the crazy about thinking about that story is that Jesus doesn't say, here's the reason I didn't show up. He doesn't actually give them the why. And a lot of times, you know what? God doesn't give us the why that he does what he does. Because he's God and we're not. And we might just have to deal with that. And I'm kind of glad that you're not God. And I'm kind of glad that I'm not. Because if I were God, there'd probably be a lot more people dead in this world. And I'd probably be super rich and famous. And I'd rule over everybody. Because I'm kind of a selfish jerk like that. And you might do the same thing if you were all-powerful and all-knowing. So I'm kind of glad you're not God, and I'm not God either. So he doesn't give him the reason why he did that, but here's what he says, 2 things, and then I'll bring you back to some great tunes tonight. He tells one of the sisters, he says, I'm the resurrection and the life, and he who believes in me will have life even though he dies. And so what he's saying is that even the tragedy of your brother dying actually isn't completely tragic, because I have given an opportunity and I have the power to restore life past the grave. And so when you hear stories like Carmi's, they only have hope if there's something past this life. If we just breathe our last, we become worm food and that's it. A story like Carmi's is as tragic as it feels in this moment. But if there's an opportunity that there might be a God that can restore life for eternity, and that you might be able to be restored and spend forever and ever and ever with those that no longer walk this earth, and those tragedies become momentary sadnesses. But here's the cool thing. That's for down the road. You feel sometimes like, does God care? What I love about that most brief verse of the Bible is this. They're walking to the tomb, right? And Jesus could say to his people, say, would you guys freaking stop crying? Okay, I'm about to do this awesome miracle. I'm going to make Lazarus come back from the dead. Or didn't you hear what I just said? You know, there's an afterlife. Why are you guys so sad? Stop crying. But he doesn't. It says that as Jesus is walking to the tomb and he sees these people that he cares about and they're brokenhearted and they're wailing and crying and mourning because their brother's dead, it says simply this: Jesus wept. The God of the universe, right? Son of God, met in the faces, and when he sees the sorrow of human beings just like you and me, he doesn't say, hey, buck up, stop crying. Don't you know that it's going to be okay later? What happens is he's so stirred in his heart for love for his creation that it brings him to tears. And not just little teeny kind of misty tears. It says that he wept. He wept because Jesus mourns with those who mourn, and he rejoices with those who rejoice. So he cares, and he can do something about it. And those are two words that are pretty powerful. And they're two words that show me why I really think Jesus is the most amazing person that's ever walked the planet Earth. That's your thought for the night, Pub Theology. If you have any questions about it, you can text them in to 317-550-57. Cliff and the boys are going to come back up and play a couple more tunes for us.